Sup, suckers? Tis I. And what you're seeing in the background in these videos might be one of the last times it's going to look like this. It's going to be a little bit of a makeover because soon I'm going to be moving into my new house and I'll have more room. And sorry, I started thinking about how I'm actually going to have to move with two small children and like this much energy. So this is going to be great. Don't know how long of a video this is going to be today, even though I said that last time and then I prattled on for almost 30 minutes. Cell phone on the bed, cell phone not on the bed. I got up to move it and also hurt my knee because I'm 9,000 years old and clumsy as fuck. Anyway, I wanted to talk today about something that's very, very important to ADHD productivity, and it's a huge part of my personal philosophy as a coach and as a person with ADHD, and that's that we have a few things that we need that has to be the foundation of whatever we use to be productive to get things done during the day if we actually want to get shit done and continue to get shit done on a regular basis. And this isn't about the usual stuff, you know, everybody's always kind of, me included, talking about things like urgency or interest or novelty. Those are all very important too, don't get me wrong. But I am talking about things simply from a productivity perspective. And when we're putting together our productivity system, I guess, our productivity rules, we have to make sure that these things are included. So with that, let's get into the 3 things that every neurodivergent or ADHD productivity system needs. Okay, so before we get started, as usual, if this video does what it should for you and you feel like you've learned something and you feel like I've helped you out, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps me find cool people. It helps cool people find me. And I don't know, it's just the right thing to do. So anyway, let's get into those 3 things that you need. The first thing is going to be portability. So if you're like me, and I'm assuming you are, you have probably gotten roped into buying a crazy number of whiteboards, whiteboard pens, planners, calendars. We're drawn to these things for a very simple reason. That reason is that we crave being able to visualize the information that is floating around our head daily. It's different for us than it is for neurotypical people, because neurotypical people generally are able to think about things in steps without much help. We, on the other hand, tend to struggle with that because when we try to prioritize, when we try to focus on one thing or another, we tend to wind up getting distracted. It's how you could start out watching this video and somehow wind up later on watching videos of, I don't know, cats fitting into things that they're not supposed to fit into. It's all about the fact that our brains tend to move at a very weird, quick pace. And because of that, we tend to see these things in front of our faces as immediate, no matter what they are. And so if you can imagine having every single to-do that you have in front of your face at once, that's a lot, right? That's going to feel like you just got to pick something out of the air so that you can stop feeling like you're falling behind. So planners and calendars and things like that really speak to us because you think that you should be able to just write all your shit down and put it all in one place, and then suddenly life will make sense again. Except for the fact that we struggle with things like object permanence, which is something that most babies are supposed to figure out behind peekaboo when they're like 1.5, 2 years old. But we struggle very much with it, especially when it comes to intangibles. If we are supposed to do a project or we're supposed to have a meeting and that meeting or that project are not written down or put in some sort of permanent space that we can continue to check in on, we're going to eventually forget that we have it. And that is, at least in my opinion, where planners, calendars, and the like often fall short. You're not going to carry a whiteboard with you to the fucking grocery store. You're not going to carry your planner around with you most often. A lot of the things that we tend to use to write things down on a whim are not things that we are going to carry with us. So what you really need to do when you're trying to figure out where to put your everyday to-dos and your tasks and your projects, you need to have them in a place that is portable, that can go with you, so that if you happen to be somewhere and you're, I don't know, a 5'2" black woman in her 30s who thinks that you have a meeting on Thursday at 4:30, you can absolutely go ahead and check right then and there, and you'll be able to see in that moment that you actually have the meeting that day at 2, and then you can hurry home, and then you can have your meeting and pretend that you never once forgot. You need to be able to take your plans with you. Honestly, it's one of the main ways we're going to remember what we have to remember. Right, so moving on. Thing number 2, flexibility. You could also say customizability. Really, it just has to do with how easy whatever you have is to change. It's yet another reason, and I don't want to shit on planners, which is a sentence I never really thought I would say in real life, but I don't want to make it sound like there is something wrong with writing things down on paper, because there really have been a ton of studies that have shown that writing things down can help us memorize things a lot easier. So it's not so much that, it's just that I think, at least from what I have seen in my experience as an ADHD person working with other ADHD people, we struggle so hard with simply just writing things down and walking away. We can't just do that. And this is kind of the same problem when we come to things like paper planners or calendars. We really need novelty. We need to be able to make things look different. I don't know about you, but I have days where looking at my to-dos and the list is boring and I don't want to do it. I want to look at it in a calendar, or I want to look at it written down on a piece of paper for once, or I want to see it in pink or blue. Like, I like seeing things differently day to day because it keeps things interesting. And that, I think, is a problem with most of the things that are out there these days, because what they tend to do is they tend to still kind of be locked in one way. And so it makes it very hard for us to customize and change things to adjust to how we're feeling that day. And looking at the same thing over and over and over again can make us bored with it, and can make it so that we really don't want to look at the same thing over and over and over again, which is exactly why I did not get made up this week. I didn't want you guys to get too used to seeing me looking like I actually gave a shit, and I wanted to keep things interesting, so you're welcome. But overall flexibility also has to do with how well your planning system, your to-do list, your calendar, whatever, integrates with changes in your life. If you have a calendar that is regularly having to get shit scratched off on it because you're constantly having to move things around and change things, that can be very jarring and very disconcerting to an ADHD brain. A lot of us, strangely enough, we are messy as fuck when it comes to our personalities, but we actually don't respond very well to messes. Being in a messy situation makes us feel disorganized on the inside, which tends to make us feel like we don't have a lot of control. So having a piece of paper, journal, calendar, planner, whatever the hell, that we're having to scratch out all the time to make changes for our lives eventually can get very frustrating and feel very messy. And you have things like digital planners and digital calendars, which are a little bit easier, but you're still looking at depending on how badly you want to be doing this, you are still having to make sure that you are making time to go in and move things around. I personally don't mind that. I like actually having a more hands-on approach to moving my day around. It kind of gives me a little bit more accountability. But I know that there are some people out there who really like having help. Quite a few people really enjoy the Motion app, for example, that I mentioned in one of my previous videos. And it's a great app. I have my problems with it, but I can still see how it is incredibly helpful simply because it's moving your calendar around for you and it's making things feel a lot less messy for some. Either way, whatever you use, it has to be something that is just as flexible as regular life is going to be, because shit happens and you really just don't want to have to go through a whole rigmarole. Yes, I said rigmarole. Obviously, I'm in the 1930s. But you don't want to have to go through a whole bunch of rigmarole every time life throws you a curveball. So, whatever you choose, make sure it's flexible and make sure that it moves with your life. This takes us into the third thing that is extremely important when you're putting this stuff together, and that's simplicity. Kind of like I said before, you don't want something that's got a whole bunch of steps to it, because if it's going to take too much work for you to do, you are going to, I don't care how well medicated you are, I don't care how great your energy is, you are going to have days where you are not going to fucking bother. Just not, because it's going to be too much work. And your brain is going to be like, this seems really annoying and I don't want to do it. And, you know, my husband was laughing once because I started talking about stuff like this, and he said, you know, it's kind of funny. It almost seems like you talk about your brain like it is a separate being. And first off, I'm sorry, is this what it's like to be neurotypical? Like, do neurotypical people have brains that just kind of work in tandem with the rest of the body? Like, are they a one soul? Because that just sounds weird to me. Second off, I realized that for a lot of people I know who have mental illness, neurodivergence, that's absolutely what this is like. You are not trying to work with yourself. You're trying to work with a brain that has almost gained its own sentience, if that makes sense. Instead, it's like you're living in a house with a shitty roommate, and the shitty roommate owns the house, and the shitty roommate also removed all of the doors from everybody's rooms, and that shitty roommate also likes to take time out of their day to walk into your room unannounced and make comments about how they feel regarding the way that you live your life, and you have nowhere else to go. So the way that I choose to look at it, and the way that I always explain to people with minds like ours, is that you are not trying to figure out how to control your brain or how to control yourself. You're learning how to work with it. So yeah, you have a brain that doesn't like working ridiculously hard. This asshole roommate likes to put his feet up on the coffee table and hog the remote. And you don't have the option to leave. So what you have to do is you have to figure out rules and regulations that make it so that you are more in control than the shitty roommate. Which takes me back to the simplicity thing. See, I looped back around. It was coming. Which brings us back to the simplicity thing. If you have a brain that doesn't really like to work ridiculously hard at keeping things together, then make your organization easier. Which means that you pick something, whatever it is that you do, keep it simple. When it comes to planning, when it comes to putting things together, less is absolutely more. And of course, you know, you want to make sure that it's enjoyable, right? Like, I mean, you could sit there and be like, okay, well then why don't I write it down on a sticky note? And it's like, because that sticky note's going to wind up under the couch, and then you're going to forget whatever the hell it was you're supposed to do. And then, you know, you're just going to be like killing trees and wasting paper. But if you enjoy planners, if you truly do enjoy planners, try to figure out a simplistic way of filling it out, of changing things around when it needs to be changed, and try to work it out so that you can bring your journal with you, or try to add a second component, which you can then transfer your written to-dos to when you're ready. And that actually brings me to, I know I said that there were only 3 things, but I'm adding a bonus 4th, because this is a huge part of what I suggest. And that is that you should have some sort of integration in place when you are working through your to-dos. And what do I mean by integration? What I mean is, whatever productivity method you're using, it needs to most likely have at least one other method to integrate with it. I wouldn't suggest having more than 3 integrated methods, but definitely 2. And this is why. I have yet to have found any method that works perfectly for everything that you do. And that's fine. But that means that you have to have a way to be able to review the same data, the same to-dos, the same appointments, the same important information in more than one spot, whether you are at your main computer or using your main source of that information or not. For example, if you use a digital planner on your iPad, maybe you do carry your iPad with you everywhere. I don't know very many people who do, but there are going to be times when you are going to be without it. And you might need to review something that you wrote on it, and you might need to keep track of something that you had already started keeping track of on there. So in order to make it so that you've got what I call a productivity ring, you need to add something to that iPad. Whether that is, taking a screenshot even and sending it to yourself, or making sure that you actually take the time to put whatever you wrote on your iPad in your personal calendar. Whatever it is, you have to have one way that is your main way, and then that main way needs to feed into the other 1 or 2 extra ways, so that you always have everything in front of you, and so that you can change it anytime you need, so that it satisfies those other 3 of the cycle. See how I did that? Why do I feel like this is a dirty movement? Putting all of those things together. Basically, what you want to do when you are putting together any sort of productivity method, however it works for you, is you want to make sure that you have something that is going to travel well, that's going to be easy for you to update, and that is going to be accessible in multiple different ways. In doing that, you're going to make it so that you have a lot less of a chance of falling behind on adding things that need to be added. You're going to have a much easier time organizing the things that you need to have organized, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to visualize the things that need to get done. I am following this up with a little shameless self-promotion. Today, I have released something for pre-order that meets all of this criteria, and it is available only for my newsletter subscribers. So if you want a chance at it, you're definitely going to want to go ahead and join my newsletter list. The link is in the description. You're going to want to join the productivity list. Feel free to join the other one too if you want. That's just basically me talking about my new novel that I'm supposed to be writing. Keep an eye out. The pre-order is only going to be open to people on my newsletter list for the next 3 days. And then after that, you won't be seeing anything about it until the 31st, when I will be officially releasing the whole thing to everyone. So if you think that this is something you would be interested in, I suggest you head on over to that link in my description, sign up for the newsletter, and you will get to see something about this very thing either later on today, which would be the 18th, or up until the 21st. There will be a little bit more about it almost every day. So with that, I am letting you go. Hopefully I will be coming to you from a new studio area next week. make sure that you take good care of yourself, guard that energy, drink some water, and I will see you in the next video.